In this video I wanted to go over some steps to create some basic mountain forms using three colors. Now this is an in-progress painting on a 9 by 12 canvas panel. The panel was primed with burnt sienna to begin, and the three colors I'm using for the painting are primary blue, burnt umber, and titanium white. Now the background in this painting has already been established. The sky has got two layers on it already, and I'm beginning here a second layer on the silhouette shape of my mountains. And the color I'm using is just a middle tone of my blue and my umber and my white, and I'm just blocking in the shape, paying attention to the top edge, trying to create the silhouette shape for my mountains. So I'll just block in that color. Not too concerned about my brush stroke at this point. Just trying to get the general shape and color established for my mountains. And as I work my way across, I'm just trying to flesh out the shape of the mountain. Not worried too much about perfection at this point, other than that top edge. Trying to make it an irregular edge and doing my best to not repeat the same peaks everywhere, and just try to make it look natural, rugged, and random. And then the rest of the shape I'm just filling in with that basic middle tone out of my three colors. Now I used a water-soluble pencil to just brainstorm some mountain shapes here, and the nice thing about the pencil is that if I make a mistake or do something I don't like, I can just paint over it or wipe it off. So I've kind of given myself some framework for where I think my mountain forms ought to be. I've mixed up a color value that's just a little bit lighter than where I was at for that foundation of my mountains. It's the same three colors, just leaning a little bit more to the white side. And I'll use my pencil lines as just a loose guide for where I think some of these highlighted surfaces might be. Now, where I'm putting these marks is random. Other than that, I'm trying to imagine that this is the lit side of this mountain. It's where the light is catching the shapes of these mountain edges. And I'm doing my best to let the brush just skip around so I don't just end up with the same mark over and over. And I'm trying to pay attention to the angle of my brush marks so that the angle helps to indicate the surface of the mountain that I'm trying to show. So you can see how the brush changes direction, and I use the corner of the brush, the edge of the brush, varying amounts of pressure just to change up the size and shape of the marks I leave behind. And I'll just continue with this same color value to all points on my mountain shape here. Just trying to find, again, where I think the light might be hitting some of these mountain surfaces. And if you're practicing with something like this, just starting small with small marks, kind of experiment. Being able to visualize and in your mind's eye see where some of these shapes are. Once you get an idea of the shape and the form, it can be really satisfying to create and flesh out some of these peaks and valleys in your mountain. So the angle of my brush strokes goes a long way into informing where the surface of that mountain is. You can see my pencil mark here. I created a little valley or a little wash in between these peaks. use this lighter color to highlight some of these surfaces and use the direction of my brush to help show which direction these surfaces are going. Now, using that same color value as a starting point, if I lean a little bit towards the darker side, a little bit more umber and a little bit more of the blue, I can get a little bit more of a shadow color. And I'll use the same technique of brush marks in the opposite direction to create some texture on the shadow side. So again, I'm using my reference lines as just a general framework for where some of these brush strokes ought to go. And I'll also use the highlights that I just put down to inform where I think some of these shadows should go. And I'm just using all those same techniques that I just mentioned as far as the angle of my brush stroke and the variety of my mark making. So that initial base color that I began with, the highlight, and now this shadow color all work together to create the illusion that there's some form and shape there with pretty basic brush strokes and basic techniques. I'm switching back to my highlight color here, and I'm just going to try and see if I can flesh out a few smaller peaks or surfaces that are catching light here. This area of shadow to me seems kind of blocky. I want to break it up a little bit. So some other little marks can show some highlight and surface. And without too much effort or anything elaborate as far as technique, got some pretty cool mountain and rock shapes that can be applied to something much larger with a little bit of practice. To finish this off, I'll grab a Q-tip here that I've moistened a little bit, and I can rub out some of those pencil lines to help clean up what I've got going on. And with 3 colors and some simple technique, I've got a pretty cool mountainscape here. And I can definitely expand on those techniques to make something much more elaborate. Thanks for checking out this video.